Well, hello. Happy Cinco de Mayo. I hope everyone got their tacos.
It is Revenge of the Fifth. You're right.
This Revenge of the Fifth. Oh, I should have led with that. That's my bad. That's on me. Yeah. No, I missed out on the Mexican food today. I had a lunch engagement and that wasn't on the menu, so I'll have to make up for it. Lots of conversations about maybe starting a Taco Tuesday routine. I hope that sticks. So, you guys do anything special for food today or no? Early
No.
margaritas.
Oh, that reminds me. I need to order food while we're talking. It's fine. Can do some DoorDash. No, yeah, we haven't done much. I want to get barbecuing here soon, though. I mean, you've seen the weather lately around us. Not quite barbecue
Finally.
weather. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
we need another 10 or 15 degrees.
yes,
We're,
yeah, I
we're,
wouldn't
I
mind
mean,
it
I
if
don't
it
know. I think,
was hot and
yeah,
rainy.
I mean, it's getting there. It's getting there. Yeah, I know you're saying you get a little more heat, but it's been cold and crummy for so long. Like this weather is the right direction. I feel like it's like a degree every day, so we'll get there.
Well, I guess we should address the fact that like Spirit just said, the return. Yeah, we had a couple weeks off. Real life happens, and that's just how it goes. So
Yeah,
we
we're
are
happy to be
back
here. We
on.
missed you all.
Yeah, it's I had a work event one night, and then I worked at late one night, and then I forgot what the other night was. We had something else going on, but
Yeah, I think you had a work event, and then you just I don't remember the reasoning, but we're gonna start till late, and then we ended up not doing it. So yeah, like you said, life happens. Well, anyway, return of the O'Grady Show. So yes, here we are, the O'Grady Show, also known as Ready Set Data. We have O'Grady, of course. Clearly, Spirit Guide believes is the star of the star of the show.
it's just the
Uh,
beard.
it's the beard. Yes. Uh, Software engineer. We have Lee, our DBA, and then
Extraordinaire.
extraordinary. Oh, I should. Yeah, I apologize.
Don't mess
It's
up his
official now,
title.
actually. It's
Yeah,
on. It's on his desk. It's on the little plaque there. It says DBA extraordinaire.
about time.
And he works remotely, so he gets a lot of visitors. You need to see that.
He
All
made
the
the
important
plaque,
people.
but it's fine.
Yes. I have plaque too, but my dentist is working on that. Anyway, so hey guys, I'm Anthony
Nice.
Fortner. I'm the data engineer, and we're excited to be back in the cockpit, back on the road. I don't know. And
On the road again.
on the road again. So we had some time off. You could say rest and relaxation if you want, but
Can.
the general consensus is we're glad we're here. The topic is continuous integration, CI. It's the first half of CI/CD. I think it's the middle of CI/CD, but that's a different
Fair.
conversation we'll have in a moment probably. Um, do you guys do you guys deal with continuous integration, or
Yep. Yeah,
I
we're a
much one of you does, please?
mhm. Yeah, we're a CI/CD shop. Um, well, we're aspiring to be a full CI/CD shop. I'm sure you're going to talk about it, but continuous integration is a continually evolving and built upon practice. It's not just like done. Um, in my opinion, I don't know. Are
Oh
you going to
yeah,
touch on
yeah,
that hopefully about the
yeah, absolutely.
keeping it moving forward instead of being like this is what we do?
Right. And that's kind of the theming behind me breaking into three pieces, right?
Mhm.
I talked on source control already, and now I talk with integration because that's what really it's the second step, even though source control isn't mentioned in the name. You've got to
Yeah,
have source control, right? I don't know that there's another way to pull it off. Continuous integration, it's the practice of automating the integration of code changes from multiple contributors. So the only way to integrate that is TFS, Git,
hmm
I don't know, source safe. I'm trying to think of other things that I haven't used, but I
fork,
what's that?
fork.
Fork. So GitHub, but that's really just Git with some
Yeah.
fancy
Well,
tools.
fork is really
Uh,
just Git with a nice skin on it too. So
oh, is it? Oh,
yeah,
is it like a GUI?
Yeah, you can do all your Git commands and stuff in it, but then it also has a very nice branching structure for our separate branches we have. So you'll see like the main trunk going up, and then it has every commit comes off and comes back. It's kind of like what Visual Studio has, but it's the application's dedicated towards that, so it's a lot more.
Uh,
There's a lot more features that you can utilize, and rebasing, and
yeah.
it's super cool.
So that brings up a good point. Segue to kind of a review. So with source control, the whole point is to get the code in a repository, and we, let's say the three of us work on a project, we make a change, we'll bring the code onto our computer, right? Even if we didn't have source control, we'd have to have it on our computer. Let's go really far back, and then we have an index cards, and then we make our changes. And in order to run them, we have to get it to the right place. Back
Mhm.
in the day, a giant machine somewhere in a university. More modern days, a server, which is probably virtualized. But it has to get there. So no matter what, the code's moving back and forth. With source control, you pull it down, you make the changes. There's various branching strategies, as Brady kind of touched on there for a moment. And eventually you get it to the main branch. And that is hopefully what ends up running out production. There's several steps in there that we skipped over. The idea is to allow everyone to work on their individual computers and have a means to get it together. Now, I already mentioned that continuous integration is the automation of that. Another important feature that it has is the fact that not only when I offer my code back up to the branch or the main trunk, that gives an opportunity for it to be tested, an opportunity for it to be deployed in a safe environment, not to prod, I hope, but onto
Well,
either.
Well, sometimes you can go straight to prod. It's fine.
I don't always test, but when I do, it's on prod.
I just wanted to see Lee roll his eyes.
Yeah, you
Speaking of
got what
which,
you wanted.
You can't take the
Yeah,
developer
yeah.
out of me. Like, that's just. You're inhibiting progress. Come on.
And you're making after-hour work for me.
That's true.
Hopefully getting paid overtime. I don't know.
Yeah.
In the extreme stereotypes, I should say.
Oh,
You're
gotcha.
making
Yeah.
extra work for me
Yeah.
after hours.
You mean job security?
Oh, is that the deal? You're trying to make sure I stay employed. Okay.
Yeah, right?
So yeah, deploying directly to prod, testing on prod may make some people have job security, but it's not usually good for you, and that's
It's usually
why.
not job security for the person deploying to prod, so.
Yeah, that's why
I don't
it's
actually
considered best
condone it,
practice.
everyone.
Yeah, best practice to test, and if it's a best practice to test, that's probably why it's in DevOps best practice to test automatically. So typically what would happen is you make your changes, you can make a code, and then immediately it fires off the tests. Unit testing is pretty much synonymous with continuous integration. I guess I can't speak unilaterally, but I think that's a lot of the point is the fact you push it up, all those tests happen.
Mhm.
Every time you make something, every time you build a new feature out, you are building your unit tests. Unit tests, you should hopefully run them. I almost always remember you should run them before you commit back up, make sure they all pass, and then you pass it up. And then over time, every time somebody adds a feature, you end up with this large library of unit tests.
Yep.
All they're waiting to catch something that was never going to happen, and clearly it does because they
Yep.
fail on a regular basis because we broke something. We broke something that we didn't even realize we were affected. This is definitely 1,000 times true in databases. I'm sure Lee will admit. Like you just making this one little change, and then suddenly 17 things broke. I had no idea that job under the server cares that it's a nvar try.
Yeah, you can definitely run into that. One little change could be not so little.
Yeah, and in real life we had that. We actually the developer did do homework. He even got with me, and I gave him all the stuff that was a dependency for table was changing, and a whole list of things that we're using that are dependent on the table was changing. And all he did was change something from a 50 to a 100. Var care, var care, right? Because we care. It's var care. Okay. Um. So
We're gonna have a
and
discussion on how we actually say varchar.
var. So I hear that if you care, it's var care. That's
Oh,
what I hear. But also, this is Jason thing that's happening, and it's
freaking
taking over the
Jason.
world. I know, right? I don't want. I'm an old man. Get off my lawn. I wanted to be Jason. I said it wrong. See, they're getting to me. Brainwashing.
This is how it starts.
Anyway, so GIF.
I'm not even getting into that one.
No, that's for a different show. That'd be a great show.
We'll have a whole show
Um,
called How Do You Say It?
We need theme music for that. Like immediately when we start the show, it's like the jazzy like 80s game show music. And how do you say it? And then we all produce a word and tomato. And then we get mad. And then we get mad at each other and rage out that we're saying it wrong.
We can do that. Make that happen.
Bring some.
I was just told last night that I have some rage hanging around that I can easily grab a hold of and use at the appropriate times and at the appropriate levels to
There we
get
go.
stuff done. So it's interesting that we're bringing up raging out
Yeah.
over how we say things.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, is it
Okay.
SQL or SQL? Go ahead.
Oh man.
Does it depend on what side of the pond you're on, or whether or not you're on a TV show?
Whether or not you know
Yeah,
what
I
you're
can't
talking
remember.
about.
Yeah. Can't remember the show. There was a show and someone was like looking at code. They mentioned SQL, and I think it was the guy who plays the John for in Office. The guy who plays
Oh, John Krasinski?
Krasinski. Thank you. I don't know his name in the show. Anyway, yeah, I think it's him. He's playing like a super spy or something. I don't know. It's a TV show, and he says SQL instead of SQL, and
Mhm.
lots of people laughed about it. Just IT people. We care deeply about how we pronounce things. What were we talking about? We're talking about testing on prod. Yeah,
Talking
don't
about
do that.
Unit testing, and I think that's where we were. Yeah. Don't do
Yeah.
things on prod
Don't do things on
unless you've
prod.
first done them on lower environments.
Test first.
Test first. So if you have unit, so if you build out your unit test, then when you commit your code and you kick off the continuous integration, it will test your code using the unit test that you built and that other people built. So that way, if you did accidentally break something, which happens, if you don't break
Oh, yeah.
something you're not developing, you'll know right away.
I think it's been said that if you haven't cost the company $1 million, you're not yet a senior developer or a
I'll
seasoned
get there
developer.
someday. I'll get to someday.
Yeah.
Wait, just this lunches count? I cost the company $1 million in the course of lunches over time.
I think it counts.
All right, $1 million
I'll have to
bacon.
check the rules, but it's like
Anyway, so yeah, you're merging all the work together, and a lot of times, many people say that the goal is to do it several times a day, right? You know, you get a working piece, you commit. You get a working piece, you commit. The sooner you find the mistake, the better.
Mhm.
And it's actually, the term has been around since 1991. I was actually surprised about that. Shows what I
continuous
know.
integration has.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know.
So so it was oh, I'm sorry, I got extra low. Brady Booch, I should have figured out how to pronounce his name. Booch was the one that initially proposed the term in 1991. At that time, he wasn't saying doing it several times a day. That came later with extreme programming, and that's I feel is very popular now. When I read up on anything, it's always like, well, Netflix or Twitter or probably Twitch, AWS, all say we should be pushing out those integrations several times a day. You commit as often as possible. Let our code hit each other. And I have to agree. I have to agree because back in the old days where you'd pull it down and you work on it for days, I know Grady would do the same thing. When you guys try to put your code back, if they're so different,
Yeah.
you get those merge conflicts that people are scared of that because they're painful.
Trying to get this thing.
right?
Sorry. I dropped my book and I was going to pull up Extreme Programming.
There you go.
It's a great book if anybody is ever looking for one about extreme programming. It
Embrace
is
change. I love the subtitle.
by Kent Beck. Yep, great book. I'll add it into the Discord.
Apparently, that's where the whole idea of 10 times a day comes from. And that ends up leaking over to when we'll talk about it next time, I think, if we're following the schedule that I understand. Continuous deployments, if you're integrating all the time and you have good unit tests, then you can do the deployments quickly more often as well, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's
So is that-
because we have unit tests and we also have integration tests. So the unit tests are more for making sure that the builds are properly done, and then the integration test is making sure that it is able to be integrated in the continuous integration pipeline, and it works well with other people. It plays well together. So
Yeah, so what can you tell us about your continuous integration setup? Like you said, your shop is definitely a believer in CI and CD.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So how does it work? Does it work good? Do you look at how does your branches work? Like overall, what's your feelings about it?
yeah, so I mean overall it needs work. I think everybody that's doing continuous integration, continuous development, is constantly trying to improve it. But it's getting to a very good place. We use, I think I've mentioned it before, mobbing tools like mob.io, and it creates a separate branch for you that you and whoever else is in this mob with you. If let's say there's 3 developers here, and me and Anthony decide to go work on a part of a project. Well, we don't want to be on the same branch that Lee's on because we're going to be bumping into each other. That is the idea of branching. So the mobbing tools, what it does is it makes a branch that me and you can swap between. So it keeps Lee on his own branch. It makes one for me and Anthony. And whenever I do the mob next in my command CLI command line, it actually just lets anybody that is using that command line pick up the branch where I left off without having to check in, without having to, do all that work. And it makes mobbing and pairing a lot easier because I'll be like, all right, you go, how about you take a look at it? And I could have written 200 lines. And instead of having to be like, all right, let me check this in, make sure we're doing this, merge it properly, pull back, Anthony, you pull out, and, get the new code and you test it. I can just be like, all right, mob next. Anthony does mob start, and he has all the code.
Wow,
It's
that's kinda cool.
mob.io.
Mob.io, I think it was mob.io is what we use for the timer. The
I'm getting
actual
game.
maybe that's not. Maybe it's a work type link, but
That's
the-
cool. No, that yeah. I
the
wasn't trying to
actual
figure out how it was.
mobbing tool is, I think it's. I might have to look it. I'll look it up, but it's a mobbing tool we use. So it's a CLI, just command line. You say mob start, mob next, and it does all this work for you. But I'll look it up and I'll get it and put it in the Discord as well. So in that case, we have these branches continuously, me and you back and forth on this branch. We check into the main branch as soon as we have not just viable code, but something that actually is worth something. So we don't always do minimum check-ins. So like today, I was looking on some JavaScript code. We found some formatting issues, some incorrect use of double equal versus triple equal, like very basic stuff that doesn't really break anything, but it's more beautification of the code. I don't check that in. until I have enough work that someone would actually get use out of what I check in.
Okay.
And then we continue on from there up the branch. Next thing we have to do, we break back off the branch and trunk-based development. So it's working pretty well for us so far.
Yeah. I think it's caught on pretty good where I am too. It's pretty popular when you were there. So, and then, we bled over and tried to do continuous integration with databases. And the continuous integration part, I feel like with databases, it's kind of an Oreo. It's hard on the outside, it's easy in the middle. The integration itself wasn't difficult. So it was the source control part, getting everyone to understand, like, hey, you should do commits. You shouldn't just deploy. You should keep the source control up to date, put your migration scripts in there, so on and so forth. And then the deployments, I think, was the one that a lot of people had trouble getting their head around, and still do. When we get someone new joins, so like, how the heck do you do this? And we'll talk about deployments a lot more detail next time. But the integration part wasn't bad. Once people understood they should put their code in, I think 9 times out of 10, people aren't tripping over each other with the integration.
Yeah.
Like, merges aren't. Okay, I'm not on wood.
Yeah,
So far,
merges aren't what you're about to.
Yeah. Because of our strategy, the merging hasn't been a problem as far as databases. So because almost everybody has their own scripts to do a thing, and then we use migration-based deployments to state-based deployments. So you have a script that's going to change a table. Lee has a script that's going to performance tune these 3 procs, and he has them all in one script, so he knows it'll all go out together. I go in and I add a couple scripts to do something, and because when I go and I make a change and I test, I'm not going to touch your scripts. It's probably fine. It's not like that in code, in like C#, like you said, JavaScript, because when we're going into service and we're changing all these methods in the same file, we're all changing the same file, so we've got to be careful. I might be fixing a bug in a method that you're adding a feature to, or vice versa. But again, if you're using continuous integration, and if you're one of those advanced shops that like has a continuous integration on each branch too, not just on the trunk, then my code got tested before it went up, your code got tested before it went up, and then we can have that all tested, all ironed out.
Yeah, that brings up a good point too, with having separate branches, continuously integrating on your separate branches as well, and make sure you're not stepping on each other's toes when you're both working on even not the main trunk, but the same branch. So
yeah, a big part of this, at least in the DevOps space, is fail as soon as possible. I know there's so many people like to trip over those words. You should never fail. No. It's just you want the error to happen. We had a rough deployment recently, and we've been blessed. Our SQL deployments have been pretty much stellar for a while now, and have been so easy. And this particular database, the code went out, and it was wrong. It didn't work.
Yeah.
And they had to hand code some SQL to make it right, and it was sad. There was wailing and gnashing of teeth. But we got through it, and I tried my best to, portray the fact that like this is the database where you didn't follow the rules of continuous integration and continuous deployment. This is all these other databases where we do CI/CD. This is the one where you guys said, "Oh, it's going to be too hard for this database," and we didn't do it, and we would have found out that we had this problem on dev. And it's pretty obvious that we would have, and everyone agrees. It's like, when you're ready to have the conversation, let's get this database on the CI/CD, because this deployment should have taken an hour. It was a simple deploy. Anyway, testing. You do the unit testing on every single branch. There's no point merging them in until the unit tests are passed. And also, we talked about testing and unit testing a lot already. code smells. There's lots of code smells and linters and software out there that'll read your code. Did
Yep.
you say you do that and you with the code smells?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we have actually currently I'm working on code coverage and code smells to improve code quality in our new application we're building. Really had one
Oh,
of
yeah?
those. We had a big push at first. Really had a you get all that base work done. You build that skeleton, you start putting some meat on its bones, and it starts becoming an app. But like, it's a learning process in the beginning. So after a month in, you're like, I could have done it this way. Now that I know the full process that we need to go through. So it's more you have to go back and refactor. So yeah, getting rid of those code smells is a huge part of cleanup work, if anything.
Yeah. What code smell gets you the most?
Code
Can
smell
you
gets me
recall
the.
one? Yeah. What do you trigger? What do you get yelled at?
Oh, what do I
Or
do
what-
wrong the most?
Yeah. Yeah. We all,
Oh,
because we
oh
all.
yeah. No, I was thinking what would trigger me the most, which is
No.
improper
What do you
spelling
do?
of code.
So-
Drives me insane. What do I do?
I just
Oh.
got a Java update trying to take over my computer. I was like, no.
Trying to think what would be something that people get annoyed at me for. I know one of them, and it might be a debate more of which way is the true standard, but I hate doing single line ifs where you don't have the curly braces, because you can, if it's a single line if, you can eliminate the curly braces and just put it on the next line. I hate
Oh.
those so much.
Using curly braces is a code smell.
I think
If
it
it's
might
only
be
one line.
considered if it's one line, even though I do constantly, because when I know that if I need to get back into that if statement to add something, then no matter what, you have to put curly braces. So I'm like, just put them, and it's ready to be changed if it needed. Like, it's more future proof.
Yeah, and some of those feel like code golf. I don't know. The one that gets me all the time in SQL. I'm curious what Lee's thought is on this. I get yelled at for using dash for comments.
Oh,
That's
instead of
considered a
like
code
code blocks
smell.
or
Yeah, that's coming out of line. What's your if you have an opinion, Lee? I would love to hear it.
okay, I have to
So-
change my answer. Mine is that I use dash when I'm commenting on SQL.
So I hadn't really thought about this before, although I observed it, but I didn't. I guess maybe really focus on it because I was bent on moving on to whatever else I was going to do. But a person that the three of us all know about wrote a blog post about why you should never use dashes or the two dashes to comment SQL, because when monitoring software comes across that and it's showing you a piece of SQL in a monitoring software and you go copy paste that, you end up with more commented out than you intended. Like, it will change. Sometimes it doesn't copy paste well, and you end up with things that are commented out that you didn't intend. And he was encouraging us to use block
Mhm.
comments for SQL, which is the / asterisk, whatever you're going to say, and then asterisk / So I have to stop myself still from doing dash. But I'm in a better habit now of using block comments for SQL because of that. And I've run into this with the platform that we use. We use SQL Sentry at my work, and I've run into scenarios where people are using dashes. I mean, that's common.
It's super common. I'm glad you're making progress. I'm not. It's like nail biting. Like you'll get done with something and you'll see a proc and like this dash is everywhere. And you gotta go and fix it.
Yes, and you can't
so-
even
Yeah.
go like replace it with a block comment. Like you can't do a
Yeah, 'cause
find
you gotta put
all
it at
on
the
yeah.
end.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
That does make sense though, that copy paste, because the dash dash is line dependent. So
You need that.
Yeah.
You need that carriage return, or else
yeah,
no go.
Yeah.
That's for people in Python anyway.
you start
White space
messing with
is.
YAML files and see how that
Oh
goes.
yeah.
So you might be getting to this at some point or planning to talk about this, Anthony, but what is what is different about trying to do CI for databases? What unique challenges are there with that?
So the actual integration part, because I feel like so far the integration, unless it's something I'm not picking up that you're putting down, has been easy. It's the source control that's hard, and the deployment that's hard. I feel like the actual integration has not been a problem, um, but it might be because we do migration based, and that tends to be like it just seems to be sweet. Like it's an Oreo. It just seems to be a sweet spot where like the generation hasn't been a
Yeah.
problem. And unless there was just something you're thinking of that on that.
Well, so the thing that seems to be unique is that databases are not just their data definition language. In other words, the database isn't just, create table, migrate table, and some columns. It is that, but it's more because the table actually has some stuff in it. Whereas application code is just it's code. It doesn't store something else. So when you go to change database code, you actually potentially could damage the data inside the database.
100%.
So you have to be cautious about that and aware, conscious. That's cognizant. That's what I'm looking for.
Cognizant. There you go.
Of that.
You should also be conscious while you're programming.
You should
But,
be
you know, depending
conscious.
what
I
time it is.
recommend that.
You know, I've done it both ways, and I think that conscious is better. So,
The
Good
final product's
recommendation.
better. Time goes by faster the other way. But anyway,
Sure.
welcome to the Drunken Programmer podcast.
And I think
no, so
that's I think
Oh,
that's
go on.
a slight difference when you're dealing with a database. Is you're not just if the database were empty, you could change it all day long, and it wouldn't
Yeah.
really matter. But if you're changing a table, like you said earlier, I think earlier you mentioned changing something to varchar 50 up to
Mhm.
be 75. Well, that's great, but where else in the database does that piece of data get used?
Yeah.
If you don't change it everywhere and suddenly now the data is too long to go somewhere else, now you've exploded something.
No, yeah,
That kind
absolutely.
of thing. So
So you're saying everything should just be varchar max? Okay. Sounds good.
no,
I know Lee's little trigger points.
man,
Yeah.
you do.
Oh yeah, no.
I've
in your
hit them all. That's
environment,
why I know.
Go ahead. It'll be great. Just don't do it in our environments. Hey, can we just put index on that column? Sorry. Yeah. So okay. So the source control, continuous integration, and continuous deployment. That whole DevOps pipeline, that whole CI/CD pipeline. What everything you said, Lee, is 100% correct. That's a big difference between apps and databases. With an application, you get to wipe out the application. In fact, if you have stuff left over, artifacts left over, like config files and stuff, a lot of people would say that's a bad practice, right? It should be wiped clean. It should be. You should be able to point that at a new machine, run your deployment, your automated deployment, and then life is good. Gravy, biscuits, all the stuff, right? With databases, you don't get to do that at all. Like you said, it stores state. So the integration part, the actual part where my code mixes your code, like I said, it's technically easy, but you're right. Yeah, before that, you should have thought about how you're doing it, and if you didn't, after that step, you're gonna have a big problem, right?
Yeah.
If you change the code from one state to another, and you change the code from one to another, I'm about to use the word state too much, then you might damage the state of the database. And if you didn't think about that beforehand, you might not have a rollback script that'll actually take care of it. If data gets truncated because of your operation, you,
What
you
happens?
truncate something. Yeah, you make the column
Okay.
bigger, the data's still gone.
Sorry, you
Um,
froze right after you said truncate, and then we're like,
Oh, really?
what happens?
Oh, yeah. If you truncate everything and you lose that data, making the column bigger won't make the data go back, right?
Right.
It's not like Excel where you can hide something and bring it back.
Yeah.
So that is a big difference in the whole pipeline and databases versus code, right?
Yeah, I was wondering, are you going to
Um,
get into pipeline management, or what should be in a pipeline as far as like an integration pipeline more than a just
Yeah,
normal code? I don't know.
after we get through the deployment, we should probably talk about the whole thing holistically. Bring a good point. But with integration with just CI, um, yeah, I've been kind of peppering that in, right? So like to recap some of the things. As soon as you commit, you integrate the code in. As soon as that's done, you should do your testing. You should have your unit testing. Well, first of all, does it build? Everyone's favorite game, right?
My
You should
favorite
really know
game.
that ahead of time. You do your unit tests. You should always be writing unit tests, in my opinion, in a lot of people's opinion. You should do your code smells. Um, more testing, more taste testing. Technically, the integration smoke testing comes after deployment. We're kind of talking about pipeline right now. You mentioned that already. Integration testing. Once it's there, does it all run? Databases aren't immune to this. You should do it with databases as well. Same for smoke testing. We're not doing it everywhere. I've been trying to add in integration testing and smoke testing for databases. And how I do that in case it's useful for anybody in the future. So one way I smoke test is I have two ways. So one is I have a proc that just does top 0 to all the views of the database.
Just to make sure that they're able to
So
be
I say
touched.
and it's select star, don't hate me, select star, top
All
0,
the tables in
right?
the database. Oh,
All the views. So when the deploy happens on dev, now we're not talking about prod right now. On dev, it happens, and then in my log file, I'll see all the columns, right? Because you got top 0, you don't get any data. I'll see all the columns, and if a view is broken, we'll know right away, right? And then it'll fail to build. So you did a commit and a view's broken, and sometimes it's not even your fault. Sometimes some little rascal made a hotfix on prod, and because of the way the deployment happens, I'm getting ahead of myself, I guess. You'll find out on dev. Before we had the our CI/CD pipeline test for that, somebody could break a view that isn't used very often, and we won't know for a while. By the time we get to it, we don't know when it broke.
yeah.
So now, the painful part was the first time we get, and I'm sure Lee can mentally guess which databases was really painful. But there's some databases been around for a while that have a lot of stuff in them.
To start with
And
you.
no comment. So when we first did this, there was tons of them broken, and so we had to like make the decision: should we try to fix it, or is this like how long has this been broken? Is anyone actually using it? And so that was the hard part. But once you got in a good state, now it's running all the time. The minute someone broke something, you would get a red flag on that commit on dev.
Yep. And do you guys use the
the
like integrate with your email and all that stuff, so you actually get alerts and toast pops or emails or when
Yeah,
something an integration
well,
breaks? Yeah, that's why I
half
get
the
them all.
people.
My cell phone goes
Yeah.
off. I'm like, what the heck is going on?
That's really the best way. A lot of people and they end up putting it in their they have rules in their Outlook, and they actually end up not seeing it, and they don't know, and then you got to ping them like, dude, like no one's integration's working because you broke something, right? You committed code that's bad. Um, we do mainline trunk development. We don't have branches. And, you mentioned branches.
Mhm.
That's the side effect of the way we do it. You commit the code and it's broken, you're supposed to fix it right away. And so someone commits code, goes home, and you're still working, and you're trying to commit. You're like, well, now I got to fix what you're doing. So that's the trade off.
Oh yeah.
So
SQL metrics, right? Oh yeah, cool. Go ahead, go
so
for
there
it.
used to be something called the DLM dashboard that I just learned has been retired and replaced with this SQL Monitor metrics object that I referenced there. And so this is probably more relevant to the continuous deployment, which we keep seeping into a discussion about. It's kind of hard to talk about CI without the CD part
Exactly.
a little
yep.
bit, but yeah, it's a challenge to detect. Like you mentioned, Anthony, well, if somebody changes something in prod directly, then that can create a problem. And that made me think of this. So there's a way there, at least with SQL Server, to detect those kinds of unauthorized changes ahead of time, and hopefully you have someone watching that information, probably your DBA or a keen developer, and then you can merge that back in to dev and then try again with your continuous integration and see if anything breaks or if it all still works.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure other RDMSs have similar stuff out there.
I'm sure. Yeah.
I know me and you both have used DLM dashboard in the past. But yeah, it just automation's everything, right? Yeah, it's good to that's good. That's really good for so someone made a change. I want to actually see the change, the before and after. If that person was using source control, and you should be able to see that. But if you're in an environment where that's not possible, I'm in an environment where there's a lot of hot fixing, a lot of hot patching, unfortunately, then you gotta have special tools to help you with that. I mentioned earlier there's two types of testing I do. In the SQL side, I do something that's very similar to unit testing, but it's in SQL.
Mhm.
It's along the same line. Like I said, I have this one. I have a script that'll find all the views and run them. But particularly in the BI server, I haven't really managed to get this going on our main application service. But on a BI server, whenever we make a new view or stored procedure for something, we have this list of SQL unit tests, and we add some test cases to that. So that way, when you commit new code, you'll find out if you broke one of those test cases, right? Again, unit testing. There actually is unit testing frameworks for T-SQL. It's
Oh, is there?
T-SQL T. Yeah. So if you want like a legit testing framework, you can use those, and it basically will instantiate test cases for your procs. It'll actually give you fake data in the database that you can use for your testing and assert that certain things are true. When I'm done with this process, this is how things should look afterwards. I'll do all that, and it'll clean up afterwards, and your database will be fine. And
So you can do
this is all in
test-driven
depth.
development in
SQL,
SQL.
100%.
Very cool.
So you can make
I think that'd be a good topic for you to talk about.
Yeah, actually, that would be. So you can have all your unit testing is the best after it's already been started. When you already have the big kitchen sink proc that does 17 things, and you have all these unit tests testing those things still work. Then when you go on to make a change, you can go, okay, I'm making this change. It's not going to affect these unit tests, but it should do one more thing. You make your test, it fails, you add your code because you mentioned test-driven development, and now it should pass and everything else should too. And you know right away all those things that like maybe you didn't even make those changes, but someone put those unit tests in there. It's great. I
Yeah,
feel like we went full
proper
circle.
say proper unit testing eliminates regression testing for that same reason. You know, if you have each test built out and what it's supposed to do, and the next test is not breaking all those above it, well, then you shouldn't have to do even worry about regression testing because you have every test plan covered. So that's
Yeah, we didn't do a unit testing talk yet, have we?
I don't think we have.
No.
So we should. We should.
It would be a good one, yeah. Because I'd like to hear how you guys deal with unit testing and stuff on a database side as well.
Yeah.
or
Okay. So we should
Testing in
definitely talk about
general,
that.
yeah.
I guess I'll do one. I can do one quick war story of unit testing that I was very happy with. I was in the C# world though, but I'm working on an application that handles ordering. Um, I know I'm a database guy, but we were short staffed, and so I actually have all my units. I have like different classes for unit testing, and I have one that's literally just like, here's the scenario, it makes a decision, and then I want to know that it made the decision I had. Those unit tests, the whole block of them are scenario, then it should have decided order, this many of that, this many of that, and like the whole page is full of it. And every time I had to make a change, it would end up breaking something, and the unit test would tell me right away. And then what was really great is they completely changed the rules. That isn't the great part, but we've all been there.
That doesn't sound great at
The
all.
business says, no, we're wrong. We don't want this rule anymore. We want you to order with this logic. Surprise.
Wow.
I went in there, those unit tests, and I changed all the unit tests first. I don't normally get to do test-driven development, but in this case I did. I changed all of those tests. So when you have to the business people, I had a spreadsheet that said, when this happens, you want this, and they approved that. Yes, this is how I want the logic to work. And so I plugged that into my page of unit tests, and then of course it failed because I need to change logic. And as I change logic, you see, and Lee, I don't know if you know this, in Visual Studio, I don't know if you need to be enterprise or not, you can have live unit testing where you see your code and you see these little red X's or green check marks right next to each line. And as you're fixing your code, it'll just go green. Like, without having to look, that it's starting to pass because it keeps testing what you're typing.
That's good. Yeah.
And it's wicked, right? Like, and so I'm working, and there's so much satisfaction. Like, I'm like, oh, I think this is right. I'm not doing anything else. It's just, yep. You're good.
We have
so that was one time I got to really like test-driven development, like in real life doing work. And I'm like, I can see why people like that.
Yeah, so we have NCrunch, which is a live unit testing for .NET. So same thing. As I'm typing anything, my tests are continuously running. So even if I'm not trying NCrunch, like cereal, I don't know, like Crunch, I don't know, Captain Crunch, yeah. But yeah, so like I'll keep it up on the bottom all the time, even when I'm not dealing with something that I think shouldn't really break anything, because even if I misspell something, I'll see that a test broke. I'm like, well, why did the test break? Then I look back, well, okay, yep, obviously a misspelling, and it'll tell you why it broke. Really super cool.
Yeah, I think you accidentally brushed up against something I think is really important. You said, even if I don't think anything's going to break, that's really the point. Like, because I'm sure it's true for you in the code, but I know it's the case for me and Lee. I've witnessed it when we're working on something and Lee's like, yeah, that's going to break something. Like, there's tons of times where we know experience, like we know that like this is probably going to go well. Let's not do this on a Friday. Like, we know is a problem. That's not what this is really for. This is for all those times that you had no idea. Like I told you about the I don't even know if I finished the story or not. In the beginning of this conversation was a long time ago, been days. The the person who the engineer who made the changes did his research. I remember him running it by me, and I said, "Oh, here's some more dependencies," and like they tried to like do it the right way. And then the next day, of course, not the same day. The next day after they deployed, some jobs failed, and it was just because of the varchar change, but we didn't notice it because this is really interesting. It was a view, and the view remembered the old column length. And when we called it through a link server, it said, no, this is supposed to be 50. And it throws an error.
Oh, because it was looking
And I'm
for
like,
one additional
yeah,
whatever it was.
there's somewhere in there, it checks and goes,
Or I guess
I'm expecting
25,
this
whatever
to
you
be this
changed it
view.
for. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's kind of treating the view as a table. And so there's the schema there, so to speak, and it expected a 50 and it got 100, and then it says something's wrong, bail out, and it's like, oh man. So and this has happened before, but it's just a thing that you don't expect. I didn't think about that.
Mm-hmm.
We always and tell me if this isn't true for you, Lee. This is something true for me and a lot of other people I deal with. We always view these views as not being real until we run them. I mean, they're compiled, but like we always think, well, if you change something in an underlying table, when I run it, it's just good. But that's not actually true. So yeah, that was an interesting little surprise.
Yeah.
Again, I actually don't know what kind of testing would have fixed that. I guess actual integration testing.
Yep.
But yeah.
Yeah, I'm not
Oh,
sure
boy.
how. Yeah, I mean there are a lot of dependencies, and there are ways to query different things inside SQL Server, for example, to get dependency information. And you can get some of it from SQL Server Management Studio as well. If you right-click an object, there is a menu option for dependencies, and you can have tools that should show you, or they sell the tool that on the basis of it'll do all these great things. And if you want to know the dependencies for this stored procedure or this object, you can get that too. Just send us your 27 payments of $19.95 and we'll send it with our free Ginsu knives.
Mhm.
Yeah. Ooh.
I'm
But
down. Hold on.
those things aren't always foolproof. So it's good to be able to test things before you actually roll it out to a database server that touches customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know. I think it's about that time that we should probably look for someone to raid.
I can
And
be on that. I can do that.
very cool. Cool.
I think.
Cool.
Maybe.
Yeah, we like you said, Lee, we keep touching on continuous deployment, and they're all so related, right? They're so intertwined. And exactly what we just said is part of why it's so important. Like, just having source control isn't good enough. We also have continuous integration, and just having continuous integration isn't good enough. We also have to, to be able to have automated deployments or possibly continuing deployments, because that issue I just pointed out would have been caught by integration testing if the change was deployed and we had integration tests that used the view, it would have blown up. If that was on the BI server and we had those tests I talked about, where all the views, remember I said that? All the views were just checked afterwards, it would have caught that. And then the unit tests that I was talking about, that's it's really more of an integration test. In the SQL side that we had, if it again, we would have detected it. So, a lot of these problems that we're still seeing are definitely like pointing to, hey, this doesn't happen when over there anymore, does it? So, or when it does, it happens in dev. So,
Well, do you want
Sure.
to give a kind of synopsis on what you're going to be going over the next? Because it's a 3-part. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the third part is going to be continuous deployment. So, you commit the code and source control, consider integration, merges it back with your fellow developers or DBAs. I think someday all DBAs, well, maybe not, but hopefully a lot will also will embrace CI/CD um, paradigm. But you get all the code integrated. You do tons of testing. You do so much testing that hopefully nothing gets by, and then you deploy it, and then you do more testing, the integration tests, smoke tests, and then it should move through the environments at some cadence, whatever makes sense. That's the deployment, and then the next time I talk, which I believe it's me again next Thursday,
Mhm.
the we're going to talk about automated deployments and the specific kind, hopefully, continuous deployment, where you do everything we just said, and that leads you to the point where you get to automatically dev will look like whatever you committed, right? And then eventually QA, and eventually prod. Some of the things that I learned with that, that was a really hard part with SQL because we don't get to just blow stuff away, especially on prod, right? You can't just blow away
No, you
prod
don't.
and then start a new database and be like, what? The solver developers get to do it. Why can't we do it? What's the box for? I'm sorry, boss. Um,
You like your data, right?
you like your data, right? I put in a spreadsheet beforehand, just type it all back in.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, that'll help us.
So
All right.
that's what we're talking about.
Awesome. Looking forward to all of it. Hopefully, have some positive input to add. But yeah, I'm really I really want to hear about the data side of it because I feel like I'm pretty spun up on the developer side. Um, but
Yeah,
it's a whole different process, honestly. Like how we do things is all coding and .NET. So I'm curious how you're going to no, just
it's very
to hear you
different.
explain it. Yeah.
Yeah, and every time I've ever had a conversation about it, I've always felt like there's a lot of tripping over the first two pieces because again, there's three pieces, and that's why I just broke it up. I said we'll talk about one, we'll talk about the second, and then next time we talk about automated deployments and continuous deployments, the CD
Cool.
part of CI/CD.
I did find a raid target, VMware Tanzu. I think we rated them before. They're another tech podcast, and yeah, make sure you drop that follow to them as well as us, and we will go ahead and sign off. I am O'Grady, software engineer. We have
Fortner, data engineer.
Lee Markin, database administrator.
and we will catch you all next week. So let me make sure you catch the raid on the way out in 6 seconds, and we will see y'all next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.